Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 6 wide receiver start or sit decisions for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, I'm going to be going over every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the notable wide receivers in every single matchup. But before we do get on into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I'd also like to ask, if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me, to please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. Link to my Twitter is also down below in the video description. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 6 wide receiver start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. This week is the first week of the NFL season with bye weeks. Teams on bye go as follow. We got the Atlanta Falcons, the New Orleans Saints, the Jumbo Jets, as well as the San Francisco 49ers are on bye this week. That is why they will not be included in today's video, so please make sure that you put those players on your bench. So again, we will begin today's video with Thursday Night Football, Buccaneers at the Philadelphia Eagles. In this game, I'm going to be starting all of the big 3 wide receivers for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that being Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, as well as Antonio Brown. Going up against the Miami Dolphins last week on Sunday, Mr. Antonio Brown and Mike Evans formed a fucking Eiffel Tower over the Dolphins defense and pounded them all game long. Antonio Brown went off at the beginning of the game, and then in the second half, it was Mike Evans' season. And Chris Godwin didn't have a terrible game, but he was kind of left out to dry because the other guys were just playing so well. Now, typically every single week, one of these guys is going to end up being the odd man out, but it is damn near impossible every single week to predict which one of the 3 is going to be the odd man out. And that is the most tough part about it, because every single week it could be Evans's week, it could be Godwin's week, it could be Antonio Brown's week, or maybe 2 of them end up having a big game, and there is that true odd man out scenario. So this week, up against the Philadelphia Eagles, it is entirely possible that this is a murder by the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, as well as Antonio Brown all perform excellently every single week. Even if I do kind of believe in my own head that one of them is going to be the odd man out, it is near impossible to predict which one that is going to be. So I'm starting all of them this week up against the Eagles on Thursday Night Football. For the Eagles, I'm going to be firing up Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith has had 2 solid showings 2 weeks in a row. This week going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Going into the season, the Bucs defense seemed impossible to penetrate. They were impenetrable. They completely locked down what was an insane offense in the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year. So going into the year, everyone had very high hopes for the Bucs defense, and up against the pass, the Bucs defense has not been good at all. I do believe Devontae Smith could have a huge spot this week up against the Buccaneers, and the other Eagles wide receivers, Jalen Reagor and crew, I'm not going to be starting any of those guys because I just feel as though you can't really rely on them. The only one that's very reliable is Devontae Smith. Now on to the London game, the morning game. Wake up bright and early last week to see the Jets and the Falcons, and guess what? You get another treat of a matchup. The Dolphins at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I'm a fan of the Dolphins. I am going to be waking up rock hard to watch this football game, Viagra level hard to watch the Miami Dolphins play some football. But at the end of the day, is this a great game? No. The London fans should be very disappointed with the scheduling by the National Football League. But at the end of the day, Dolphins at Jags, it's at 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m., one of those. So make sure if you're on the Eastern Standard Time, and if you live on the West Coast, you are down tremendous because this game is early on in the morning. But make sure at least before you go to bed on Saturday night that you set your lineup for this game, the Dolphins at the Jacksonville Jaguars. In this one, I'm willing to start Jalen Waddle as well as Marvin Jones, but neither of them looked very good last week. Jalen Waddle, seemingly being the only fucking wide receiver out there for the Miami Dolphins, would have, at least in my head, attributed to the fact that this guy was going to see targets upon targets, but instead last week it was Myles Gaskin's season because Jacoby Brissett was just dumping the ball off thinking Myles Gaskin was fucking Christian McCaffrey, and it worked quite well. He had an excellent game, but it really did hurt Jalen Waddle this week going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I feel as though Jalen Waddle could have a solid game with Tua Tagovailoa hopefully back on the saddle as the signal caller for the Miami Dolphins. For the Jaguars again, Marvin Jones didn't have a great game. Laviska Shenault didn't have a great game up against a not-so-hot Tennessee Titans defense, but the Dolphins defense has been complete and utter ass cheeks, and DJ Chark isn't there, so I feel as though Marvin Jones could have a solid game. A lot of that game for the Jaguars was the reason why they were so successful up against the Titans was because of the run game with James Robinson, and that may be the case again going up against the Dolphins. So neither Jalen Waddle or Marvin Jones are must-start players. They're kind of bottom of the barrel starts on the week, but they do warrant the starting tag because they're not that bad to where I wouldn't want to start them, especially in a tough situation. And I'm going to be sitting down Laviska Shenault again. He did not do all that much last week. It seemed like Urban Meyer fucking cracked the code. He fucking cracked the safe on how to use Mr. Laviska Shenault up against the Bengals on that Thursday Night Football game from 2 weeks ago. But then last week, he forgot how to do it. He completely forgot what to do with Laviska Shenault, and he was basically just not used at all until Urban Meyer kind of uncracks that code again, puts all the pieces of the puzzle back together. I don't want to be starting Laviska Shenault, and Devontae Parker is banged up. I'm not even too sure if he's going to be playing in this game up against a not-so-hot Jaguars defense. Now, we move on to the real Sunday slate, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Kansas City Chiefs at the Washington Football Team. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs are down astronomical right now. The Kansas City Chiefs look nowhere near as good as they looked last year or the year before that. This team looks like it's going to be a complete and utter fucking dumpster fire, and don't blame Patrick Mahomes, because it ain't his fault that the fucking defense is this bad, and with the defense being this bad, it should be no shock that you want to be starting Mr. F1 Scary Terry McLaurin in this game up against the Kansas City Chiefs. The defense got bent over by Josh Allen, by Emmanuel Sanders. Stephon Diggs, he played all right, but he didn't have a huge game, but he was a part of it. By Stephon Diggs, I'm sure if Cole Beasley actually got thrown the ball, he would have dominated as well. This was a domination effort by Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, and the same thing could happen here for the Washington Football Team going up against the Chiefs defense. Now, is the Washington Football Team offense as good as the Buffalo Bills? Of course not. Of course they're not, but at the end of the day, Terry McLaurin is such a key piece, and I feel as though the Kansas City Chiefs will not be able to stop him in this game. Tyreek Hill, he's a must-start player every single week. It doesn't matter if he has down games, if he has a hard matchup, you throw him out there every single week, because all it takes for Mr. Tyreek Hill to have this humongous showing is literally 2 catches. He could have 150 yards on 2 catches and 2 touchdowns. That's just how good Tyreek Hill is. I'm going to be firing him up confidently in this game up against the Washington Football Team, and I expect the Kansas City Chiefs to have a bounce back spot this week up against a bad football team defense. For the other Chiefs wide receivers, Flash Gordon, McCole Hardman, all those guys are going to be sits for me. Byron Pringle, the Chip King who ended up scoring a touchdown up against the Buffalo Bills. Those guys are just ancillary pieces to this offense. They are not very reliable at all. There's no true number 2 wide receiver there, unless, of course, Mr. Flash Gordon himself, the savior of the universe, ends up elevating himself to be that. But as we are sitting right now with the Chiefs offense, I don't feel comfortable starting any of the wide receivers outside of Tyreek Hill. Same thing goes for the Washington Football Team. Curtis Samuel now week to week with an injury. That experiment has failed thus far this season. He has played 1 game fully, then he got hurt last week, so I don't know what the hell to do there. Adam Humphries is the secondary option now. Even up against a struggling defense in the Kansas City Chiefs, I just don't think I'm comfortable rolling out Adam Humphries this week, even up against, like I said, a not-so-hot defense for the Chiefs. Next up, we move to the Rams at the New York Football Giants. In this game, I like Cooper Kupp. I like Robert Woods. Now, last week, if you guys watched the start-sit video, if you watched the live stream prior to the Thursday Night Football matchup between the Seattle Seahawks and the LA Rams, I was banging the fucking drum. I'm talking about banging it aggressively, and I was screaming to the mountaintops about how Robert Woods, Bobby Trees himself, was going to have this humongous showing. Sean McVay's talking about it all week. We need to get the ball more in Robert Woods' hand. I will take accountability. It is my fault that Robert Woods is not seeing the rock. He needs to see the ball more. He's a key piece of this offense. He's basically given the gawk gawk suck off special to Robert Woods, and guess what happens when you give Robert Woods the fucking football? He's going to play well. Robert Woods had an excellent showing last week up against Seattle. I expect the same thing up against the Giants. I expect him to be a key integral piece inside this offense. For Cooper Kupp, I expect the same thing. I expect the Rams to put up a big spot on the Giants defense. I like Cooper Kupp on the week for the Giants. Now, Kenny Golladay is reported to be out. Sterling Shepard may be back. Darius Slayton may be back. And my assumption is that, or obviously Saquon Barkley is out as as well. Devontae Booker will be the starting running back. And my assumption is that Danny Dimes, Danny Fumbles will be the starting quarterback. But last week it didn't seem to really matter at all because Mike Glennon, the long neck giraffe man himself, ended up playing quite well in that game. So Kadarius Toney, I'm firing him out there. This dude was absolutely torching the Dallas Cowboys defense last week. In week number 4, he played quite well up against the New Orleans Saints as well. I did a real deep dive into Kadarius Toney in the waiver wire video from earlier today. So if you want to hear a lot more in depth about Kadarius Toney, you can watch that. But I do love him this week up against the Rams. Especially with all these injuries, like who the fuck else are they going to throw the ball to? So go ahead and fire up Kadarius Toney and sit down John Ross, the sauce boss. But before we get into the next game, I would like to ask if you have ended up enjoying today's video thus far, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button down below. I would appreciate it a ton. So back on in to the video. Next game here, we got the Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. And in this game, I'm going to be wanting to start Brandon Cooks, wide receiver of the Houston Texans. Now, it has been a complete and utter downfall into the depths of the earth for Brandon Cooks. Now, he hasn't been awful, but he has not been as good since he was at the beginning of the season with Tyrod Taylor. Now, the Colts defense just choked immensely up against the Ravens last night. The Ravens stood no chance in the game. The Ravens literally looked like shit in the first half of the game. I was getting very pissed off because I took the Baltimore Ravens -7 in that game. Now, it did not end up covering. It is what it is, right? They win the game in overtime and they don't get to kick the extra point. But I did bet on the Baltimore Ravens money line live plus 1050, so that paid out quite well. So I'm not as mad about losing the Ravens -7 bet. But with that said, betting aside, that was a game that the Colts should have easily won, but they choked, and the Colts defense looked pretty good at the beginning of the game. So that is a little bit worrisome here going up against Brandon Cooks, the Texans, and Davis Mills. But at the end of the day, Brandon Cooks is still the #1 target on this offense. I expect him to get the ball. He is not a upper echelon start in today's video. He's not a guy that I'm going to scream to the mountaintops about being a must start on the week, but he is a guy that I would be putting in my lineup here this week up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. Michael Pittman made a, what I would describe, grown man catch up against the Baltimore Ravens last night in that game. Michael Pittman is being targeted left and right in the game. And this week, he gets the Texans. This should be a crushing monster matchup. The Monster Mash, it's a graveyard smash. It's almost Halloween, and it's Michael Pittman's season up against the Houston Texans defense. I will be sitting down Zach Pascal in a super deep league. I would be interested about him, but in normal leagues, he's a guy that I'm definitely looking to sit down this week. Next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Detroit Lions. Now, Quintez Cephas has been declared as out in this game, so that opens the door for Amon-Ra St. Brown to be the clear #1 guy. He has been the #1 guy in targets the last 2 weeks, and while I told you guys to pick him up in the waiver wire video, I'm not 100% fucking confident in this call that he is the clear #1 wide receiver there, because over the last 2-3 weeks at this point, TJ Hawkinson has taken a nap during these Lions game. He is just nowhere to be found, but eventually someone's gonna find him some way, somehow. Jared Goff's gonna throw the fucking ball to him because he's the best wide receiver on the team who plays tight end, and he's gonna have that bigger game. But now, without Quintez Cephas being there, it does open the door for St. Brown to continue that consistency. Gun to the head, if you had to pick one, Raymond or St. Brown, I tell you St. Brown, but last week I would have told you Raymond, so that just tells you just how confusing this Lions offense is, especially at the wide receiver core. So sit them all down, sit all the Lions wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, as well as Khalif Raymond. For the Bengals, I'm going to be firing up Jamar Chase, as well as Mr. T. Higgins up against the Detroit Lions. This could be a smash matchup. Now, last week, Joe Burrow got destroyed up against the Green Bay Packers. I was genuinely shocked that he was able to come back into the game. And it comes out after the game that he goes to the hospital nearby the stadium because he has a throat contusion. I didn't know NFL players could get a throat contusion. I thought that was an injury for like Mia Malkova or something like that. But I wasn't ready to read that after the game for the Bengals. I hope Joe Burrow is okay, and I believe he will be fine here to go up against the Lions in what should be a smash matchup. Jamar Chase is just unreal at this point. Jamar Chase completely beat down any expectations that I had of him, and as well as the expectations that a majority of the fantasy football space had on him. I personally believed that the preseason, the training camp, all this noise about the fact that the guy can't catch the ball. And I swear to you, 2 days or 1 day before the season kicks off, they're talking about how Jamar Chase, it comes out that this motherfucker can't see an NFL football because it doesn't have the white stripes that are on an NCAA football for college. And then out of nowhere, this dude comes out and looks like fucking Randy Moss in week number 1. This guy is playing unreal. What type of bullshit was that was coming out? Why was he so bad in training camp? Why was he so bad in preseason? It doesn't matter though, because he is going to dominate up against the Detroit Lions. Tee-hee. Higgins is a start as well. The thing about Tyler Boyd is I think a lot of people are going to try to talk themselves into Boyd this week, but in my opinion, he is the kind of third option there when Higgins and Chase are healthy. He's kind of the odd man out for the Bengals, so I'm not willing to start Tyler Boyd this week. Next up, we move to the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears, and in this one, I'm willing to start Davante Adams, and that's about it. The other players for the Packers, the other wide receivers, Randall Cobb and friends, to me, there are games where Randall Cobb's probably going to have 2-3 touchdowns, right? That is entirely possible, and it's entirely possible that that happens this week up against the Chi-Town Bears, but the kind of, if you rub the crystal ball, the percentage chance that that happens is very low every single week, and there is no clear number 2 guy there in Green Bay. They have a lot of other options outside of Davante Adams to throw the ball to, but a majority of the time, the ball is funneled directly to Davante Adams, directly to Aaron Jones, so Davante Adams is the clear start on this team, and the other options are sits. They're bound to have a big game. One of them's bound to have a nice game here, but it is so hard to figure out every single week. For the Bears, Allen Robinson has completely and utterly fucking stabbed me. He stabbed me like my name was Julius Caesar, and it wasn't, Julius Caesar, that motherfucker got stabbed like 50-something times. That's how I feel after I drafted Allen Robinson, because Allen Robinson has done it with Kissin' Titties Mitchell Trubisky. He's done it with 9-inch Nicholas Foles. He's done it with the BOAT, Blake Bortles. But for some reason, he cannot figure it out with Andy Dalton or with Justin Fields. And it sucks. It sucks, but until things change, you can't start him. Sit Allen Robinson down. And I'm sitting down Darnell Mooney down. Even if the Packers defense isn't all that great, I'm just not willing to do that. So next up, we move to the LA Chargers at the Baltimore Ravens in what should be the game of the week, the matchup of the century between two excellent teams, the Ravens and the Chargers. I said the same thing last week up against the Bills, or for the Bills and the Chiefs game, and that game was a complete and utter blowout by the Buffalo Bills. I told you guys that I love the Bills in that game, and I thought they were going to cover the spread. Thought they were going to win the game, but I couldn't talk myself because I said in those videos that I'd have to do a lot of mental battle between me and the other side of myself that think that, hey, I love the Bills in this game, but the Chiefs, they're still the Chiefs. They have the potential to win this game, and obviously that was completely wrong, and my original thoughts were correct, but it's very hard, in my opinion, to bet up against the Chiefs. This is a game, if we're talking about betting, I have no lean in this game. This is going to be a high-scoring game. We saw last week what Justin Herbert, the pervert, did to the Browns defense. We saw what Carson Wentz did to the Ravens defense. Imagine what Justin Herbert's going to do to the Ravens. Imagine the score in this game. It is going to be a back and forth, bang, bang, skeet, skeet, shoot, shoot type of game here. I expect Mike Williams to have a humongous spot. He bounces back after having that terrible game on his birthday up against the Raiders. And then Keenan Allen didn't play amazingly last week, played pretty solid. I expect him to look good up against the Ravens. And Hollywood Brown virtually doing his John Cena impression at the beginning of the game. You can't see me. He's doing nothing. But then in the second half, like the first half, he is nowhere to be found. But in the second half, he erupts like Mount fucking Vesuvius and has an excellent game. I love Hollywood Brown this week up against the Chargers. The other Baltimore Ravens options, I know Sammy Watkins is banged up. They have other options as well. None of them to me are start worthy. Shout out to Mark Andrews for that huge game last night. Next up, we move to the Vikings at the Carolina Panthers. In this game, I like Justin Jefferson as well as Adam Thielen. I know, Nick, Adam Thielen played really fucking bad last week. Don't you know that? He played bad. And I understand he did. But up against the Panthers, who are a sneaky good defense, he just has to bounce back. He's not going to play that bad 2 weeks in a row. The Vikings offense as a whole has been kind of limp dick as of recently. I expect them to be able to get it up Viagra style in this game and play much better up against the Panthers. So I like Jefferson as well as Thielen. Jefferson had an awesome game last week. The other wide receiver for the Vikings, not even listed on the screen, KJ Osborne, he's going to be a sit for me. For the Panthers, DJ Moore had a down tremendous game last week up against the Eagles, and it was bad. But Darnold played atrocious. That was the worst game of Darnold's season, his career so far as a Carolina Panther. Obviously, his stat line was like the usual for when he was Jumbo Jets, Mono Man Sam, but when he was on the Carolina Panthers so far this season, he hasn't played that bad, so that was certainly a down game for him, but I believe that he will be able to play much better, thus making DJ Moore elevate in this game. I'm in for a big bounce back week out of DJ Moore. For Robbie Anderson, he is just simply not that fucking guy, pal, in Carolina. He just does not see enough usage. It's clear that DJ Moore is that guy. Robbie Anderson is not, so sit Robbie Anderson down. Next up, we move to the Arizona Cardinals at the Cleveland Browns, and I know everyone was trying to talk themselves back, do that mental gymnastics about, oh man, Odell Beckham Jr., he's going to have that bounce back game. He's going to play well. Never trust Odell Beckham Jr. This fucking Browns team smacked the shit out of the Chargers. I understand that they lost the game, but they were smacking them up all game long, and Odell Beckham Jr. was snoozing. He was nowhere to be found. When they're putting up a zillion points, this guy is irrelevant. Odell Beckham Jr. stinks. I told you guys this all offseason. I don't know why I personally bought in for 1 week in this season into Odell Beckham Jr. I will never buy in again. The goal of the Cleveland Browns under Kevin Stefanski is run the ball gently down the stream. They're trying to merrily. Life is but a dream. They're trying to just run the ball. They're trying to pound the rock with Hunt. Trying to pound the ball with Hunt. You combine those together, you get Chunt. Kareem Hunt is in for a big spot here, as is Nick Chubb. We all know who's not in for a big spot, Odell Beckham Jr. Sit him down, and plus, seems like Baker's still hurt. Just my kind of lean on it. Seems like it is still kind of affecting his throwing power, his throws, by the fact that his left labrum is injured. So just don't play Odell. With that said, obviously, you got to start DeAndre Hopkins. You start him every single week. Why would you ever sit him? Even up against the Browns. I mean, the Browns got plowed by the Chargers, so expect D-Hop to have a solid game. And then outside of D-Hop, we got Rondell Moore. We got Christian Kirk. We have A.J. Green. It is just an amalgamation, I think I used that word correctly or pronounced it correctly, of wide receivers. There's just so much talent there, and every single week, you're going to be left pulling the hair out of your head because you are so stressed out trying to figure out which one to start. And I'll tell you, look, it looks like it's going to be Rondell Moore this week, right? Because he's played well last week. And I guarantee you it's going to be A.J. Green or some other wide receiver that plays good. So just start D-Hop. Don't worry about the other guys until one of them clearly elevates themselves to be the clear number 2 for Kyler Murray. Next up, we move to and speaking of number 2, shout out to Odell Beckham Jr. So next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Denver Broncos. The Raiders lose John Gruden. Obviously, he ends up resigning for what he said on those emails. Terrible look for him. Obviously, that is a bad thing as a whole. John Gruden did a bad thing. Obviously, I don't want to just fucking go over here and sit here for 10 minutes going off about John Gruden. Everyone knows what he did was bad. So Raiders at the Denver Broncos. They do not have John Gruden. I talked about this in the waiver wire video. How does that affect this team as a whole? Now, the first 3 weeks of the season, they were really good. The last 2 weeks, they have stunk. So, does losing John Gruden make this team better, or does it make it worse? I frankly have no idea, and we'll see on Sunday. This is a tough matchup up against the Denver Broncos, and with all the stuff going around for the Raiders, maybe this is a hoorah, John Gruden is gone, and maybe they just play really well here. They blow the doors off the Denver Broncos. It is possible, but I am worried about this game being potentially low scoring. I will start Courtland Sutton because he's the number 1 guy for the Broncos. He played well last week up against the Steelers, but he's not a guy I'm ultra excited about. I was going to say uber excited about, but I say that a lot, so not a guy that I'm super duper ultra excited about this week. For the Raiders, Ruggs, Renfrow, they're going to be sits for me. Renfrow is obviously a safe option every single week. He's more of a deeper league kind of an option, but if you're down bad at receiver, could do a lot worse than Renfrow, who is very safe every single week. And the other Broncos wide receiver of note is Tim Patrick. Again, I don't really want to start him up in this game. This could be a very low-scoring game, in my opinion. Next up, we got the Dallas Cowboys at the New England Deflatriots in Foxborough. In this game, I'm going to be firing up CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. Why, you might ask? Because I play them every single week. Why is that, Nick? Because the Dallas Cowboys offense is fucking good. So you're going to play the two of the biggest key pieces in this offense. You're going to play them every single week. They're going to have big games. Sometimes they'll have a down game. But at the end of the day, even going up against the Patriots defense, don't be surprised if the Cowboys score 42 points in this game. So play CeeDee Lamb, play Amari Cooper. You play him every single week. I'm not trying to do some elite deep dive into something that's super obvious. You're going to play Cooper. You're going to play Lamb every single week. For the Patriots, this is where things get tough because for some reason, every wide receiver on this team is allergic to scoring touchdowns. they're allergic to it. The only guys that can score, apparently, are the tight ends and the running backs. So Jacoby Myers, look, if he scores a touchdown, he's going to have a huge game. But otherwise, you are heavily relying on the amount of sheer volume that is going the way to Jacoby Myers. He is still a start because he gets a lot of volume, but it is worrisome if you're in a standard league. I would not be starting Jacoby Myers, and I'm going to be sitting down Nelson Aguilar. It seems like Jacoby Myers is the clear number one wide receiver in this offense. Next up, we move to the Seattle Seahawks at the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is Sunday Night Football. Seattle at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know you guys just love that singing voice. So for the Seahawks, Geno Smith is the starting quarterback. Let Geno cook. Geno was cooking up a fucking masterpiece of a game up against the Rams last week. Ends up losing because he threw an interception. Who could have seen that coming, right? Geno throwing an interception. Shocker. But he's good enough to feed the ball to Metcalf. He was feeding Metcalf, so very comfortable with Metcalf. Lockett, you're relying on that deep play. Going up against the Steelers, again, it's hard to sit Lockett. I told you guys to sit him last week. He didn't play all that well last week, but I feel as though you just have to start him every single week almost. He is one of those very high-risk, high-reward players. You throw him into your lineup, he might drop 30 points in this game. He might score like 8 points in this game, but either way, the risk is certainly worth it, so I'm willing to start him this week. For the Steelers, I'm firing up Deontay Johnson. I fire him up every single week. It seems like Big Ben had some type of like an exploding brain kind of a moment, like an epiphany. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that gif of, I think it's from The Hangover, and the guy with the baby, I forgot what his name is in the movie, he sees, like, all the math flying through his fucking brain. I think they're at the casino in that scene. That's basically what happened to Big Ben. He finally figured it out, and he played well. So, hoping this week he continues up against a bad up against a bad Seahawks defense. I should say the Steelers defense is pretty solid, but the Seahawks defense, not so hot. Deontay Johnson is the number one target there. He's going to get force-fed the ball. I like Deontay Johnson. For Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, the TikTok star himself, is out for 4 months. That's bad, obviously, so that opens the door for Claypool to have a lot more opportunity, and he looked good last week in that game for the Steelers, so I expect him to look pretty solid this week. And final game here, we got Monday Night Football. I know this video felt a little bit fast. It's definitely faster than in weeks prior, but that's because there's less games to talk about, so the video is obviously going to be a little bit quicker, but I'm sure you guys still end up enjoying the video regardless of the length. So the Buffalo Bills at the Tennessee Titans. Stefan Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, they're must-starts at this point. Emmanuel Sanders is tearing it up. Diggs has not been great this season. He has not lived up to the expectations that I, along with the rest of the fantasy community, put on him. But if there was ever a time for Stefan Diggs to absolutely go balls deep into a defense, it's this week up against the Titans. And again, Emmanuel Sanders averages over 6 targets every single game. He's so good, and if he finds the end zone, he really could be a top 24 wide receiver in this game. A.J. Brown didn't play too hot in his return game last week up against the Jags, but I expect him to look a little bit better this week up against the Bills. I'm sitting Cole Beasley, and I'm sitting Julio because even if Julio returns from the injury, he doesn't typically play amazing coming back off of the injury. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you hit that like button down below as well. Follow me on Twitter at NotoriousFNTSY. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.